My next guest is a composer, arranger, conductor, and producer. His orchestrations have been featured in some amazing blockbusters: The Greatest Showman, The Lion King, The Dark Knight, so many others. He's also worked extensively in big band jazz as well as classical music. His compositions and arrangements have been featured by over 80 symphony orchestras all over the world. He's done orchestrations for 120 movies and worked with legendary Hollywood film composers like John Debney and Hans Zimmer. Not only that, his work can be found on a recent hit record, a Christmas album that's been on the Billboard charts for a few weeks. What could that be? Joining me now, Hollywood composer, conductor, and arranger of my new album, Christmas Merry and Bright, Kevin Kaska. Kevin, thanks for being here. Before we get to the arrangements that you did for Merry and Bright, I want to talk a little bit about your background. You grew up in Seattle. You were raised Catholic. Tell me a little bit about your experience growing up, and how did you discover music and your talent for it? Did you come from a musical family?
Yes, I am the youngest of 6 kids, and all of us played piano, violin, and my parents were both musicians as well. And so everyone was, I was the youngest, everyone was playing some instrument. By the time I was in kindergarten or first grade, I went to the piano, and I just assumed that I could just read the music and play what was there. And so I had to go, my dad was in the garage building something, and I went and brought the music and said, "What is this? How do we play it? How does this work?" And then went and set out the piano, and then he'd show me some stuff, and suddenly a week or two later, I was enrolled in piano lessons, and then studied ever since kindergarten.
Wow. Now you've said also, I read in interviews, that your family were mass goers every week, and that your father was really the anchor of the family. How did that faith and your faith influence and inform not only the music, but the arrangements you now create? Do they have an influence?
It totally has an influence, because when you're raised in a Catholic family, obviously you're going to Mass every week, and the music is a big part of it. And religion is a huge part. Music and religion practically go together. And it's mentioned in the Bible hundreds of times. And all of the major composers wrote masses, even requiems, and tremendous amount of music was written. Bach, all of his music was practically written for the church. And so growing up Catholic, right, it's just something that's in your, it's within the faith. And you go and as the Greeks said, to sing is to pray twice. So music has always been there, and in studying it, and eventually when I was in junior high, I met a very famous arranger by the name of Vic Schoen. He did all the arrangements for the Andrews Sisters. And I studied with him for 2.5 years, and I learned a tremendous amount from him. And I was his only student. But he did movies for Bing Crosby and Bob Hope and Danny Kaye. Remember The Court Jester? He did that score. Movie. Yeah, he did he did the whole thing.
He was also Irving Berlin's arranger, which we should say.
Yeah.
I mean, tell me how you came to meet Vic Schoen. I mean, you sought him out. He moved to Seattle, right, to your hometown.
Yeah, he moved there after a while I think he got tired of L.A. and eventually just moved up there, and then people sought him out up there. He did arrangements for everybody up there as well. And my mother met him through friends, and my son wants to be a composer. And like, oh, great, and I'm 14 years old or whatever. And I met with him, and I didn't know anything about him. I remember going into his studio, and he had pictures of Bing Crosby and Bob Hope, and I have those photos. I always wanted them years later. And I saw all of his albums up on the wall, and it was so impressive. And he knew everybody. He did all of Patti Page's arrangements. There was a show in the 50s called The Hit Record. He was the music director for that, because there was, Jack Parr. He did those shows, and but he would always say, I've done everything there is to do in the music business. And so he told, and not only just learning harmony from him and orchestration, I also learned a lot about how he talked with singers and just the stories. He tried to teach Buddy Rich once how to read music. The Andrews Sisters, they needed a new drummer, and then it was in New York, and you should try out this new drummer named Buddy. Oh, Buddy, okay, bring him in. Then they had a rehearsal, and the guy couldn't read music. Like, Afterwards, he tried to sit down with him. The guy ran out of the room. He didn't want to learn music. Buddy Rich never learned to read music the rest of his life. So he just told me a million stories. Yeah, it's just, I've learned so much from him.
Yeah, what were the one or two big takeaways that you carry with you as you enter into new work that Vic Schoen taught you?
He always said, know who you're writing for, because you could just generically write music and then what's going to happen with it. But if someone commissions you and someone comes to you, like a certain singer with a Christmas big band album, you have to know who you're writing for. And he said, because you could start writing for yourself or something that impresses you or something you may not like, but the people that are hiring you may not want that. It all depends on who's hiring you, who are the musicians you're writing for, the level that you're writing for, what is, when you put the record on, people are going to listen to it. Are they going to like this? And, and there's a big difference in music. Would you rather be impressed with something or would you rather be moved by something? And so a huge part of the business, a lot of people will write music that seems to, I'm going to impress them, but I would rather be moved by something than impressed with that. And he taught me these things where know who you're writing for. Know what the commission is. What is it that they want?
It's beautiful. No, that's so key, because so much of music today, Kevin, is impersonal. And one of the things, look, you came onto my radar via my producer, our friend Monica, and she suggested you for the Marion Bright album. And of course, I knew your work, but she knew you through John Williams. How did you get to work with Williams? What was that? How was that connection made?
Right after I graduated from Berklee College of Music in Boston, I was asked to write some arrangements for a very small group, and they rehearsed at Symphony Hall, Boston. And the assistant conductor of the Boston Pops, his name is Ronald Feldman, was involved with this project, which was just this small little thing that was happening. And I talked with him after the rehearsal. We just kept talking, standing outside Symphony Hall. And the more he talked with me, he was impressed with my knowledge of music. So then he said, maybe you'd be interested in doing some arrangements for one of my concerts. So he ended up commissioning me to write like a bossa nova medley. And then I ended up, he wanted to see if it was any good. So we had a meeting with John Williams. And we sat there, and John just sat there and looked at it, turning the pages, could hear everything in his head. And if something, you might want to change that one little thing right there, turn the page, and he could hear the whole thing in his head. And it was just interesting watching the master. And I was 21 years old when I got that commission. And I got introduced there, and I was able to arrange for them. And then a couple years later, then John Williams asked me to do something for him. And it was just a joy to be able to sit back in the green room of Symphony Hall where Arthur Fiedler sat, and everyone, Leonard Bernstein, everyone sat in there and just sitting there talking about music. And he would tell me stories about Benny Herrmann, and just the joy of talking with him and in that environment. It was such an honor to be there. And I miss those days too, because that was 25 years ago.
I want to talk to you, Kevin, about the arrangements you did for my Christmas Marion Bright album. And I have to tell you, I had a ball recording it with the band in New Orleans, and we just had a performance over the weekend in Dallas. It's such a joy to sing these arrangements. I think they're even better live. But one of the saxophonists, the guy who's been playing for like 35 or 40 years, I remember when he first opened the arrangement to Deck the Halls, and you sent all the music in a big box, and he opened it up, and he smiled, and he looked down the line, and he said, "These are old school. Where did you get this stuff?" Was that intentional, Kevin? And he meant the highest compliment by that. He said, "This is old school."
Well, I've been taught to do things in a certain way. When you study with the people that I've studied with and you get involved in the Boston Pops, there's a standard. It's the standard of how things are done, the way the parts look, the orchestrations, the way you put everything together. So when you're recording with a band, everything's got to be done smoothly because it's all time and money. You book musicians for a certain amount of time. You don't have them for 2 weeks. You have them for 6 hours a day for 2 days, and that adds up. It's just like the same thing with a film. There's pre-production, production, and post-production. You burn up most of your money in production, but that's why it takes a month to make a movie, where you could be in pre-production for 2 years or 10 years. But with a recording session, you only have 2 days, and that's where you spend most of your money, and you want to get the best musicians possible. And when everything is, when everything is done in the music first, where it's clear, it makes sense, and everything's readable, it makes it very smooth. And when the musicians enjoy good music and the parts are great, they stand taller in their seats, and it makes the session go smoother. They enjoy it more.
Well, and what I love about it is there's a complexity to it for the musicians, but for the listener, it's this rich, full experience. And I just love the sound of a big band. And so when I first heard the arrangements played full out, it just, it takes your breath away when you hear particularly a new arrangement. And the note I've gotten, Kevin, from so many people all over the country who've gotten Merry and Bright, and it's a consistent note. I also heard it in Dallas. They said this feels like it's been around forever, but it's entirely new. And that's really a testament to your beautiful arrangements and all of us trying to, fit in and accommodate. I want to give people a little taste of the album. Just listen to this.
Jingle bells, jingle all the way. Hark, the herald angels sing, glory to la, la.
The particular arrangements I love are Jingle Bells and that Hark the Herald Angels Sing, Kevin. Give me a sense, when we talked before you had arranged anything, we discussed that backstory, and I'd sent you some of my research on the backstory of Jingle Bells, but the arrangement you sent, you can see the pictures musically as you listen to it. They're simply incredible. How do you prepare to create an arrangement like that?
Well, every commission is different, and it's funny, Monica, our friend and producer, she sent me a list, like a 3-page list that I think you created, where you added all these, you described how you wanted it. It's funny, I read them, and it's like, and you're describing like I can't even put into words the descriptions you used, because it puts a smile on my face, and I'm like, the warmth of the happiness of the moment, and I want to have this serene, beautiful, and I'm looking at these words and I'm trying to translate. You have to think, what's he looking for here? What is this?
Right.
What is this about? How do we create this in a picture? And I remember listening to an interview with Nelson Riddle, because everyone always asks about Nelson Riddle and Frank Sinatra, because that was one of the greatest collaborations ever, because those arrangements are timeless. And
you bet.
Nelson had mentioned that Sinatra used the word cinematic. He said, when you arrange these pieces, because Nelson's intros were completely original, and Sinatra wanted him to paint a picture of the song. So you look at the lyrics, what is this song about? And the intros almost have this, it's almost like a cinematic version of what this is about before the song begins. And Nelson had pointed out that a lot of times old, like average arrangers would echo a part of the song, or like the 6th, 7th, 8th bar, they'd echo that, and then they go bum bum bum, and the singer would come in, but you're giving away the song. And Nelson said, the singers don't like that. They want you have an original song, and then Sinatra comes in with the melody, then everybody applauds, like, oh, I know that song, but you don't want them applauding during the intro.
Well, Kevin, your intro to every one of these songs is original and beautiful. The Jingle Bells, there's a kind of propulsive energy. You can literally, you said it a moment ago, you're painting pictures, but you can see the guy getting on the sleigh and the sleigh taking off in the intro of that song, and hitting the horse as you go. It's all there before anybody opens their mouth. And the Hark the Herald Angels Sing, I tell everybody in my intro now when I do it live, look out for low-flying angels, because there's this swooping energy in the arrangement that is so grand and powerful and strong. It's such a compliment to this music, and to my mind, it reanimates it and gets people to sit up and notice lyrics they never heard before. So you're really serving the song itself and its communication. I'll give you the last word on why this is a lost art. Orchestration and arrangement, and the delicacy and the time taken to create those arrangements.
arranging and orchestration go hand in hand, and some people don't know the difference. And I remember reading years ago that the difference between all three, composition, arranging, and orchestration, is that composition is like, let's say, over here, orchestration's over here, and arranging is somewhere in the middle, where you're kind of doing a little bit of both, because somebody created the song first. Irving Berlin wrote the song, so you're taking his melody, but you have to kind of arrange around it and do all these, fill in these things, but you're also, it's a little bit of co-composing at the same time. And arranging kind of sort of came around with maybe Stephen Foster, when you had these songwriters in the late 1800s writing stuff, but they couldn't really write it for a full orchestra. They could just write the melody. And so that's where the arranger was born. And from one arranger to the next, that's why Christmas music is an amazing example. There's only about 40 to 50 famous Christmas songs that everyone knows. I mean, there's thousands, but there's basically 50 that everyone knows. And those are arranged every year, and by different arrangers. That's why Buddy Rich's version of Jingle Bells is going to be very different than the Boston Pops versus Faith Hill versus Metallica. If they're all four of them are going to do a completely different version of it, because it has to do with their identity. And an arranger has to know, if they hire somebody, then you have to know who you're writing for, as we mentioned earlier, and how it's going to, help. That the version is so important to what you're writing for. The orchestra, the singer, whoever you're doing the arrangement for, it has to have something to do with their identity as well. And that's why, getting this commission with you, it's like, what is this going to be about? How can I make it exciting? I got to admit, you sounded great on it. I've listened to them like, wow. You make it exciting and fun, and that style. It really is a joy to listen to, because you give so much life to it.
Well, Kevin Kaska, I am so delighted and honored that you were the arranger and orchestrator on this album, and that you arranged these songs for me. They made them so beautiful. It was like putting on a well-made coat, and it just fit. I mean, the first time it was played out, I said, Mike, these are the most beautiful arrangements. So thank you. It's a joy singing them. I hope we get to do it again. And Kevin, you can see his amazing work. Go to kevinkaska.com for more of his incredible legacy of work. And the breadth of what Kevin does is mind-blowing. Kevin Kaska, thank you for being here.
Thank you so much.